All right, so have you ever wondered, like, do we really need religion to be moral? It's a question that's been kicking around for centuries, right? And today we're going to do a deep dive into it with, get this, an anthropologist perspective. We're cracking open Inheritance, the Evolutionary Origins of the Modern World by Harvey Whitehouse.
Oh, Whitehouse, he's brilliant. His work really gets into the nitty-gritty of how humans evolve to cooperate, build societies, all that good stuff.
Right. And he doesn't just talk the talk. This guy did the research, studying cultures all over the place, and get this, he found 7 core principles of cooperation that are considered morally good no matter where you go.
Yeah, it's like these universal moral truths, almost.
Exactly. We're talking helping your fam, loyalty to your group, returning favors, bravery, respecting the folks in charge, sharing fairly, and respecting other people's stuff. Basically the stuff that keeps society from going totally off the rails.
Exactly. And the really fascinating part, these principles, they're not just some random list. They're rooted in, get this, evolution.
Wait, seriously? You're saying being a good person is in our DNA?
In a way, yeah. These principles offered some serious survival and reproduction advantages to our ancestors. They helped them stay alive long enough to pass on their genes.
So, like, the kinder, fairer cave people were more likely to, well, keep the cave people train going.
Precisely. Think of it like this: caring for your family. It's almost universally seen as a good thing, right?
Yeah, totally.
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes perfect sense. By taking care of your kin, you're increasing the chances of your genes, the ones you share with your family, getting passed down. It's called kin selection.
Whoa. Okay, so it's not just about being nice, it's about survival, literally.
Hmm.
These moral principles are ingrained in us because they helped our ancestors make it. This is blowing my mind. But if that's true, where does religion fit in? I mean, we always hear that religion is the source of morality,
Yeah.
right?
Right, and you can see why people would think that.
Yeah, totally. Religions have rules, commandments.
Of course, they often present themselves as like the ultimate judges of right and wrong.
Exactly. In fact, I think even the excerpt mentioned the Pew Research Center survey where most people said, yeah, you do need to believe in God to be moral.
Yeah, it's a common belief for sure.
So how do we square that with what we've been talking about? Like with morality being this hardwired thing.
Well, this is where Whitehouse's research takes a really interesting turn.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So his research actually suggests that, for the most part, our intuitive religious beliefs, like those in, the supernatural, God, spirits, all that, they aren't inherently linked to those 7 core moral principles we discussed.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they seem to have evolved, at least to some extent, separately.
Hold on, seriously. You're telling me it's not like we're born with this God gene that makes us want to be helpful and follow religious doctrines?
Not quite. No, there is one interesting exception, though.
Oh.
And it has to do with that concept of deference to authority we touched on earlier.
Right, right, with the babies and the, like,
Mhm.
understanding that supernatural beings would have more power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that inherent tendency we have to defer to authority, that might explain why supernatural beings hold such a dominant place in our religious beliefs.
I see.
It's like this natural bridge from our very social instincts to our religious ones.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we're saying that morality, like, it isn't necessarily born out of religion,
Right.
but hasn't religion still played a huge role in shaping moral codes over history?
Oh, absolutely. While those basic building blocks of morality might be hardwired, the way those principles are expressed, the way they're interpreted, even how they're enforced, that's all been heavily influenced by cultural evolution.
Right.
And that includes, of course, religious beliefs and practices.
Of course, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not that religion doesn't matter. It's more like, what? It took those existing moral principles and kind of, I don't know, like wove them into these big, complex systems of belief.
Yeah, exactly. It took those basic instincts and gave them a specific cultural and religious expression. Like, remember how we were talking about that innate urge to care for your family?
Yeah, the kin selection thing.
Right. Think of that as like the raw material. And over time, some religions, they took that and shaped it into things like, I don't know, ancestor veneration. It's still that core principle, but it's evolved.
Okay, so it's like cultural evolution building on top of our biological evolution. Are there other examples of how that happened?
Tons. Let's talk about reciprocity. That whole you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours idea.
Yeah, that's hardwired into us, right?
Right. Well, that idea, it got woven into how we relate to the spirit world.
Wait, what? Like making deals with the gods based on reciprocity?
Kind of. Think about offerings to appease gods or spirits, or the idea that if you're virtuous in life, you get rewarded in the afterlife. It all reflects that human need for fairness, that give and take, but projected onto the supernatural.
It's kind of wild when you think about it like that.
Right, and it gets even more complex.
Yeah.
Because that same principle, reciprocity, it also shows up in some much darker practices. Like the excerpt even mentions human sacrifice.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, in some cultures, that was seen as like the ultimate act of reciprocity, offering a human life to appease the gods, ensure the community's well-being.
Intense.
Right. It shows you how this relationship between morality and religion, it's not always simple. One principle can lead to very different outcomes.
So to bring it all back to our original question, do we need religion to be moral? Sounds like it's a no. We've got those basic moral principles built in.
Exactly. But that leads us to an even bigger question, doesn't it? If it's not all about religion, where do our moral codes come from? And how do we figure out what's right and wrong in today's world with so many different beliefs out there?
Lots to think about. And for our listeners, if you found this deep dive as mind-blowing as we did, you've got to check out Harvey Whitehouse's book, Inheritance. It'll really make you think about, well, everything.